What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here again, continuing a series I started last year, done in much worse quality, done in a lot worse camera quality, but hopefully it's very much more seeable now. We're continuing our season since I've been alive series. The 2025 season has officially come to an end, 24-25, so now we have the recap of the 24-25 season. I started this series last summer. I did from the lockout of 2004-05 from when I was born until 2023-24. And I said I'd continue this series following the next season, and here we are. Starting with the Central Division, Winnipeg won the President's Trophy. They finished 56-22-4 with 116 points, followed by Dallas 50-26-6 with 106 points, Colorado 49-29-4 with 102 points. The wild cards were Minnesota, who made it back to the playoffs after missing it, 45-30-7 with 97 points, as well as St. Louis with 44-30-8 record and 96 points. Outside the Central Division, we have Utah 38-31-13, 89 points. The first season as the Utah hockey team, Utah Hockey Club. Now they are called the Utah Mammoth, of course. Nashville 30-44-8 collapse, 68 points. No one saw this coming out of Nashville. And then Chicago 25-46-11, 61 points. In the Pacific, you had Vegas leading the way, 50-22-10 with 110 points. LA 48-25-9 with 105 points. Edmonton 48-29-5, 101 points to round out the Pacific Division playoff teams. Below the playoff line, and actually tied with St. Louis, is Calgary. 41-27-14, 96 points, the most amount of points ever to not make the playoffs. Vancouver falls out of the playoffs after winning the division last year. 38-30-14, 90 points. Anaheim 35-37-10 for 80 points. Seattle 35-41-6, 76 points, and San Jose 20-50-12, 52 points. In the East, it's Toronto that leads the Atlantic Division, 52-26-4, 108 points. Tampa Bay 47-27-8, 102 points. Florida 47-31-4, 98 points. Ottawa and Montreal both hop back into the playoffs for the first time in a while for both, more so for Ottawa. Montreal was only about 4 years ago. 45-30-7 record for Ottawa, 97 points. Montreal 40-31-11, 91 points. In below the playoff line in the Atlantic, you have Detroit 39-35-8, 86 points. A lot of people thought they would make the jump this season. Instead, it's Ottawa and Montreal that take those next steps. Buffalo 36-39-7, 79 points. And Boston falls out of the playoffs at last, 33-39-10, 76 points. The 1 year I picked them to fall out because they just hadn't done it for years after I predicted them to. They finally fall out. Seems to be how that works. In the Metropolitan Division, we have Washington with a 51-22-9 record, 111 points. Carolina 47-30-5, 99 points. New Jersey rounds out the top three. They make it back into the playoffs after missing with a lot of injury problems, although they still had injury problems. Jack Hughes missed significant time. Dougie Hamilton, Yogi Siegenthaler. 42-33-7, 91 points. We're actually tied with Montreal. Columbus just falls out. If Columbus had made the playoffs after what happened in this summer with Johnny Gaudreau and his past tragic passing, it would have been insane. 40-33-9, 89 points. What a season for Columbus. Just playing for Johnny, playing for his family, and just wonderful. The Rangers fall out of the playoffs after winning the President's Trophy. 39-36-7. 85 points, a lot of inner turmoil. Once we get into the trades down here, we'll talk more about that. The New York Islanders, 35-35-12, also fall out of the playoffs, a team that shouldn't really be in the playoffs, just looking at the roster. 82 points. It's funny because the roster's not even that bad, but they just don't have they don't have that offensive punch that a lot of teams need. Pittsburgh, 34-36-12, 80 points. Philadelphia, 33-39-10, 76 points. Your award winners for the regular season and playoffs, I guess. Art Ross goes to Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning, 37 goals, 84 assists, 121 points. The Masterton goes to Sean Monahan of the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Calder goes to Lane Hudson of the Montreal Canadiens. The Conn Smythe goes to Sam Bennett of the Florida Panthers. Selke goes to Alexander Barkov of the Florida Panthers. The Hart goes to a goaltender for the first time in 10 years. 10 years ago, it was Carey Price that got the Hart. This year, it was Connor Hellebuck of the Winnipeg Jets, which basically completes all the trophies he ever needs besides the Stanley Cup. The Adams goes to Spencer Carberry of the Washington Capitals because no one expected Washington to be that good. I was wondering, when are they going to fall off? When are they going to fall off? When are they going to fall off? They never did. Even in the playoffs, I knew Carolina was going to beat them because they had more experience and were a more playoff team. But still, like, Washington did better than anyone, I think, expected this season. The Norris goes to Cale Makar, who wins his second of the Colorado Avalanche. I really think Werenski should have won it. I thought Werenski just had such a good season. And with how Columbus did, I can't believe Werenski just didn't get it. Clancy goes to Alexander Barkov of the Florida Panthers as well. Lady Byng goes to Anze Kopitar of the LA Kings. Lindsay goes to Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Messier goes to Alexander Ovechkin, completing his trophy case, to be honest. The Rocket goes to Leon Draisaitl of the Edmonton Oilers, who scored 52 goals, which compared to the last couple of years is low. The Vezina goes to Connor Hellebuck, who wins his third Vezina, second straight. 47-12-3 record with 8 shutouts, a .925 save percentage, and a 2.00 goals against average. He also wins the Jennings. So Hellebuck and Barkov really sweep and Kucherov really sweep the awards. Good showing by all three of them. First team All-Stars. On the left wing, Kyle Connor of the Winnipeg Jets, and at center, Nathan MacKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche. On the right wing, Tampa Bay Lightning on the right wing, Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning. My apologies. On defense, Zach Werenski of the Columbus Blue Jackets and Cale Makar of the Colorado Avalanche. It's right there. Werenski was on the first team. Second team, Brandon Hagel on the left wing of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Hagel had a 90-point season. I love Brandon Hagel. He was one of my favorite Blackhawks of all time, and he only played the better part of 2 seasons here. Also, his name's Brandon, so... But Hagel was a great season. He's not scoring that many points in Chicago. So before people say, should have kept him in Chicago, he's playing with Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov. He's not scoring that in Chicago. Leon Draisaitl is the second team All-Star for Edmonton, the center. Pasternak's on the right wing for Boston. Hedman and Hughes on the blue line from Tampa Bay and Vancouver. And Vasilevsky, the goaltender for the second team with Tampa Bay. The all-rookie team, you have Gauthier from Anaheim on the left wing, Celebrini from San Jose down the middle, Michkov on the right wing from Philadelphia, Lane Hudson from Montreal, Denton Mateychuk from Columbus on the blue line, and Dustin Wolf from the Calgary Flames. Wolf had a good season. He's the goaltender of the future in Calgary. Playoffs. This was an interesting playoffs because for a lot of the series, I felt like the better team was the team that lost the series, especially in the first round. Central team number 1 versus wildcard 2, the Winnipeg Jets beat the St. Louis Blues in 7 games. A series where I honestly thought St. Louis played better than Winnipeg, just outright. I thought St. Louis played better than Winnipeg. St. Louis collapses in Game 7 with 2 minutes to go. They were up 3-1. Winnipeg ties it and then wins it in double overtime, and they advance to the second round. If they had blown that, Winnipeg, it would have been just a complete choke on Winnipeg's part. Being the President's Trophy winner and all that. Central Team 2 versus Central Team 3. I mentioned in my video earlier today, I recorded my is the NHL actually rigged against Canadian teams video right before this. Before I made this board. And I talked about the 1997 Dallas Stars and how they were robbed against the Edmonton Oilers in 1997 by Curtis Joseph. That was very similar to what happened in this series. Colorado destroyed Dallas playing-wise. It's rare that you see a team beat so badly and yet win the series in 7. And of course, in Game 7, Rantanen just becomes God against his former team, has a hat trick, and Dallas ends up moving on to the second round in 7 games. But Colorado, Winnipeg, I could have seen they were the better team overall. St. Louis was just playing really hard and played really well against Winnipeg. Colorado just outplayed Dallas completely, and Dallas had a rough road going into the playoffs, and yet they somehow pull it off. They did not deserve to win that series. They do it in 7, though. Pacific Team 1, Vegas versus Wildcard 1, Minnesota. Vegas wins that series in 6. Minnesota just can't win playoffs. Vegas is the better team, though. Pacific Team 2, LA versus Pacific Team 3, Edmonton. It's been reversed the last 3 years. It's usually P2, Edmonton versus P3, LA. It's switched, but the results aren't switched. Edmonton wins that series in 6. In the East, A1 Toronto takes out Wildcard 1 Ottawa in 6 games. The reinvigorated Battle of Ontario for the first time since 2004, since this series started. Tampa Bay at A2 loses to A3 Florida in 5 games. I thought Tampa was going to win the Cup this year, to be honest. Like, just the way that Kucherov, Getzel, Point, Hagel, just the way they were all playing, they looked like a machine. I thought that offensive punch would just get them there, and it just did not. Number M1, Washington beats Wildcard 2 Montreal, and I felt bad for Montreal because they lose in 5. I predicted that exactly to happen. But if Washington goes up against any other team, they get destroyed in the first round. I'm convinced. If they played Carolina, New Jersey, even with how injured they were, Ottawa, Toronto, Tampa Bay, Florida, I would have taken any of them against Washington. Just so happened to be Montreal that they got up against and they won the round because of it. M2, Carolina versus M3, New Jersey. New Jersey was just too injured. Carolina overwhelms them, and they win that series in 5. Second round, Dallas beats Winnipeg in 6. So Dallas looked much better in the second round. Winnipeg did not. Hellebuck could not play on the road. In the St. Louis series, in this series, Hellebuck was awful on the road, and it really showed. And I've never seen a goaltender go from so dominant to so horrible from regular season to playoffs. You would think it was a completely different goaltender in net. It kind of happened against Colorado in 2024. It did happen this year in 2025. And questions about playoff goaltending are the question in Winnipeg. Then you have Edmonton kind of taking down their nemesis in Vegas in 5 games. Really solid series by the Oilers to take out Vegas the way they did. It was very impressive. Then in the East, you have Florida and Toronto. Toronto had Florida by the throat, but Florida ends up pulling it out in 7 games. And then Carolina defeats Washington in 5. And I had Carolina in 4, and Washington gets a game out of it. In the conference final, Edmonton takes out Dallas for the 2nd straight year. And this time it's in 5. Dallas loses in the conference final for 3 straight years now. And then Florida takes out Carolina in 5. They finally win a conference final game for the first time since 2006. Yes, 1 conference final game. They were 0-15 because they won that game 4 in this series. So 1-16 in their last 17 conference final games. In the final, it's a rematch. P3 Edmonton versus A3 Florida. Last year went 7. Florida won the first 3. Edmonton won the next 3. Florida wins Game 7. This series went different. Game 1, Edmonton comes out and they have home ice. They win 4-3 in overtime in a comeback win over Florida. You think things might be different. It's kind of like 2008-09 when Crosby lost to Detroit. He comes back and beats Detroit. You think that's exactly what's going to happen. Game 2, Florida wins 5-4 in double overtime. And that's where the series changes. Completely went the other way, and Florida really never looked back, even though Edmonton tied the series in Game 4. But first, Game 3, Florida wins 6-1. Game 4, Edmonton comes back again. They win 5-4 in overtime. You think just maybe they could pull it out here, and they're going home. They have all the momentum. Game 5, Florida wins 5-2, and they were up 3-0 early. All the momentum that Edmonton had gone before the puck even dropped. And Game 6, Florida finishes it off 5-1. I thought it was a closer series in terms of the games than last year, but overall, the series, like games-wise, was closer in 2024. Point leaders, I put the top 3 because Florida had like 8 guys with over 20 points. Draisaitl led the Edmonton along with McDavid, but he had more goals. 22 games played, 11 goals, 22 assists, 33 points. McDavid had 7 goals, 26 assists, 33 points as well in 22 games. Bouchard had 7 goals, 16 assists, 23 points in 22 games. Florida, their top 3 guys all had 23 points. Reinhart, 21 games played, 11 goals, 12 assists, 23 points. Matthew Tkachuk, 23 games played, 8 goals, 15 assists, 23 points. Carter Verhaeghe had 7 goals, 16 assists, 23 points as well. I know Barkov and Bennett ends up winning the Conn Smythe. You had Marchand. All of them had over 20 points. And I know there's another one I'm missing in there as well, I'm pretty sure. Bobrovsky goes 16-7 with 3 shutouts, a .914 save percentage, and a 2.20 goals against average. Edmonton's goaltending doesn't even get on the board. There's just no reason to put him on there. I've talked about it enough. I talked about it in the series previews. I talked about it in the series reviews. Talked about it in the finalist video, the champions video. If you want to go hear about Edmonton's goaltending this playoffs, the wild ride it was, go watch any of those videos because I don't feel like discussing it again. It's kind of like Groundhog Day if I talk about it again. Freddie Anderson, though, had some numbers that stood out, so I put him on the board. 8-5, 907 save percentage, 2.02 goals against average, and 2 shutouts. He did go down a game or two, but Kochenkov filled in when he needed to. But Anderson, if he doesn't have injury problems, could be a Hall of Fame goaltender. I'm going to say that outright. Free agency signings, the big free agents coming into this season. Bertuzzi goes to Chicago, Montour to Seattle, Toffoli to San Jose, Marchessault to Nashville, Ekman-Larsson to Toronto, Perron to Buffalo, Perron to Ottawa, Zucker to Buffalo, Teravainen to Chicago, Zadorov to Boston, Monahan to Columbus, Stamkos to Nashville, DeBrusk to Vancouver, Shea to Nashville, Lindholm to Boston, Fogle to LA, Walker to Carolina, Nason to New Jersey, Stevenson to Seattle, Duclair to the Islanders, Dumba to Dallas, Gostisbehere to Carolina, Skinner to Edmonton, Brody to Chicago, Girgensons Tampa Bay, Samsonov Vegas, Tarasenko Detroit, Roslovic Carolina, Suter St. Louis. Some of these aren't necessarily notable, but it's just some of these guys you probably might have forgot are playing. Lankin to Vancouver, which ended up being a good move. Pacioretty to Toronto, Klingberg to Edmonton, Saad to Vegas after his contract termination, and Broberg and Holloway were offer sheeted by St. Louis from Edmonton, and the offer sheets go through. So, some notable free agency signings right there. And then the trades. Some teams wanted to redo themselves mid-season, and it was very notable. Before the season starts on June 19th, New Jersey gets Jacob Markstrom in net and starts for Kevin Ball and a first-round pick. On June 24th, Ullmark goes to Ottawa. Boston gets Korpisalo, Kastelik, and a first. Boston, I think, pretty much... Boston might regret that trade, considering how their season went. But overall, Kastelik looked like a good fourth liner. Ullmark ends up being a pretty big reason Ottawa gets to the playoffs, though. In terms of, I forgot to mention this one on June 19th. LA gets Kemper, Washington gets Dubois, and those are two contracts, one for each other, that neither was working. Kemper was not working in Washington, Dubois was not working in LA. They flop them, and they both have good seasons. LA was second in Kemper was second in Vezina voting with LA, and Dubois played first and second line center, mostly second line center in Washington, who finished first in the Metropolitan. So overall, win-win trade there. June 29th, Utah makes a big splash in acquiring Mikhail Sergachev from Tampa Bay. They send Mosier, Geekie, a second and a seventh to Tampa. July 1st, Chychrun goes to Washington in exchange for Jensen and a third going to Ottawa. July 5th, Edmonton gets Savoy from Buffalo in exchange for McLeod and Tullio, and I put that one on the board because it was an eyebrow raiser at the time. August 19th, Montreal gets Patrick Laine in a second for Jordan Harris going to Columbus, who's not even in their organization anymore. August 22nd, this one was just interesting because I have a very big pet peeve with this type of situation. Rutger McGroarty is traded to Pittsburgh, Braden Yeager goes to Winnipeg. I hate when players feel like the team when they say no to the team that drafted them. You have the privilege to play hockey in the National Hockey League, and you are going to say, I'm not going to play for that team. I think of Adam Fox. I think of that's another more modern one. McGroarty's like Winnipeg jersey didn't feel right. The entitlement that it takes to come out and say that, the way Adam Fox handled his, I think, remember he was drafted by Calgary, then he got traded to Carolina, won't sign in Carolina, would only sign with the Rangers. It's disgusting, to be honest, that players feel like they have that right, and I will always be against that sort of thing. You play for the team that drafts you, and you like it. If they trade you, good. If not, walk to free agency and see what happens. You don't have the right. Your rights, soon as you are drafted, belong to the team. You should not have control over what you say. I'm gonna be honest. I think I'm from Chicago. I'm a Chicago fan, and that's never really happened. Kevin Hayes sticks out. He wouldn't sign in Chicago. That's really the only one I can think of. But that is just so entitled, and it's disgusting to even think about. August 23rd, big trade between San Jose and Nashville. Askarov is angry because Nashville extends Saros for 8 years. So he says, I want to trade. He goes to San Jose along with Burke and a third. Nashville gets Magnus Krona, David Enstrom, and a first. So essentially 2 first-round picks along with Magnus Krona, who's a third goaltender. November 30th, Columbus gets Damon Hunt, a first, a third, a fourth, a second for a David Jiricek, and a fifth going to Minnesota as Jiricek was unhappy in Columbus. December 6th, Jacob Trouba is traded to Anaheim for Vakanainen and a fourth. And that's a complete, just the culture in the Rangers were not winning. They needed something to switch up. They trade out Trouba. Then now they as of recently, they trade out Kreider, and that's not the only Rangers trade we got on the board. December 9th, Colorado, they already traded for Wedgwood to fix their backup goaltending. They traded Annunen to Nashville. They end up getting Blackwood from San Jose, along with Giovanni Smith and a fifth. For Georgiev, Kovalenko, a second and a fourth. December 18th, Capo Kakko was traded out of New York to Seattle in exchange for Will Borgen, a third and a sixth. January 24th, a three-way deal is made that Carolina, I think, would come to regret. Although, what they got back for it is not too bad either. Chicago gets a third-round pick, only somehow. Carolina gets Rantanen and Taylor Hall. Colorado gets Marty Necas, Jack Drury, Nils Juntorp, a second and a fourth. And Colorado thinks, all right, the Rantanen problem's done. We got something for him. And then the deadline happens, and he doesn't like Carolina, and he won't sign long-term in Carolina. But we'll get to there. January 31st, Vancouver acquires Philip Hedl, Mancini, and a first from the Rangers in exchange for JT Miller, Brandstrom, and Dorrington. Things are toxic in Vancouver as well, between Pedersen and Miller having issues, rifts in the locker room both sides. Vancouver and the Rangers are basically each team's parallels. Vancouver won the President's Trophy last year. Vancouver was first in their division last year. Both of them fell out of the playoffs. Both have locker room issues. They're equivalents in the Eastern Western Conference. March 1st, Chicago acquires Spencer Knight and a first in exchange for Seth Jones going to Florida. March 7th, this is the big trade here. Stan Coven, a first, 2/3, and another first, end up going to Carolina in exchange for Rantanen going to Dallas. And, of course, Rantanen ends up meeting Colorado in the first round, which is exactly what they didn't want. It's kind of hilarious the way that ended up turning out. And now Rantanen's got a huge contract with Dallas. What happens to Robertson? That's up in the air, but that's a conversation for another video. And the last one I wanted to mention, it's not on the board because there was really no more room, but Brad Marchand going to Florida for a first-round pick at the literal 11th hour of the trade deadline, and that was a huge deal. There were a lot more big deals that happened, but I wanted to just touch on ones I felt were important to talk about. But, yeah, the 2024-25 NHL season, one that it was weird. Stuff that happened was just weird. The way teams that were big in free agency, like Nashville, they got Stamkos, Shea, and Marchessault, they bottom out. Then you have teams like Vancouver and the Rangers who won their divisions. Rangers won the President's Trophy, they fall out. Columbus, who lost their best player tragically in a horrible accident, ends up almost making the playoffs. Ottawa and Montreal jump back in. But then some things stay the same, like Edmonton beating LA. Like, it's really strange, and the moves were strange. Drama was strange. The playoffs honestly weren't that strange. They were pretty predictable this year, I will admit. But, yeah, that's going to be all I have for you guys in this one. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments, what did you think about last season? And, yeah, just drop a comment. Tell me down what you want to know. And, yeah, that's going to be all I have for you guys in this one. I think I've covered everything. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video, and I shall see you all in the next one. Have a good one.